When I moved to Crestwood Pines, a gated community nestled in the rolling hills of Virginia, I thought I'd traded chaos for calm. After 3 decades designing neural networks for DARPA, I was ready to retire. No more late-night calls from Langley, no more encrypted briefings, no more wondering if my work was saving lives or just making them more complicated. I'd bought a sleek, modern house with floor-to-ceiling windows, a backyard that smelled of pine, and a promise to myself: live quietly, read novels, maybe grow tomatoes. The government had other plans. It wasn't my idea to turn my new home into a testing ground for a next-generation AI security system. 6 months before I signed the closing papers, a suit from the Department of Defense showed up at my old apartment with a proposal. "One last job, Ethan," he said, sliding a tablet across the table. The project was called Sentinel-7, a fully autonomous home defense system integrating AI-driven biometrics, quantum encryption, and a direct uplink to a classified DOD network. My role: live in the house, act normal, log anomalies, and never let civilians near the hardware. It sounded simple enough. I'd be a glorified beta tester, and in exchange, they'd cover half the mortgage. I signed the dotted line, packed my bags, and told myself this was the last time I'd let the government borrow my life. Crestwood Pines was the kind of place where people named their lawns and waved at strangers. The HOA was legendary, with rules thicker than a phone book and a reputation for enforcing them with evangelical zeal. I didn't mind. I dealt with worshipry negotiating with a 4-star general who thinks your algorithm is too sassy. The neighborhood was quiet, the neighbors were polite, and for the first few months, I blended in. My house, with its minimalist design and solar panels, didn't raise eyebrows. The Sentinel-7 system was discreet, a few sleek panels by the gate, a glowing address plaque that doubled as a sensor ray, and a network of cameras so small you'd need a microscope to spot them. To the untrained eye, it was just a fancy smart home. To me, it was a ticking time bomb with a user manual. Then came Patricia. Patricia Hensley wasn't on the HOA board when I moved in. She was just a neighbor, the kind who power walked at dawn with a fanny pack and a Bluetooth headset, always muttering about community standards. She had a Yorkie named Biscuit, a perm that defied gravity, and a knack for knowing everyone's business. By the time I'd been there 6 months, she'd campaigned her way to HOA President, running unopposed after her opponent mysteriously dropped out rumors involved a leaked photo of an unapproved garden gnome. Patricia's reign began with what locals called the Great Hedge Purge, a crusade against any shrub taller than 30 inches. She sent cease and desist letters to a guy with a bird feeder that attracted unsanctioned wildlife, and find a family for a mailbox painted teal instead of regulation beige. Me. She didn't like my gate. "It's too futuristic," she said one morning, standing on the sidewalk with Biscuit yapping at her feet. She wore a neon visor and a t-shirt that read HOA, Harmony, Order, Accountability. "This is Crestwood Pines, Ethan, not Area 51. That glowing sign of yours? It's distracting. And the face scanner? People are talking." I was pruning my roses, trying to look like the retiree I was supposed to be. "It's just a security system, Patricia. Keeps the raccoons out." She squinted, her lips pursing like she'd bitten a lemon. "Raccoons don't need facial recognition. This isn't Silicon Valley." Regulation for .1.2, subsection B. No external fixtures that disrupt aesthetic cohesion. "I could fine you." I smiled, the kind of smile you give a toddler throwing a tantrum. "Noted. I'll keep it low-key." Low-key wasn't in Patricia's vocabulary. She didn't just want compliance, she wanted control. The irony was thicker than her HOA binder. If she knew the glowing sign she hated was linked to a DOD server that could flag her as a national security risk, she'd have keeled over right there. But I wasn't about to tell her that. My job was to stay invisible, log events, and let the system do its thing. Patricia, though, had other plans. The trouble started with the perimeter panel. It was a black, matte rectangle mounted by my front gate, no bigger than a tablet, with a faint blue LED that pulsed when it was active. Below it, in small letters, was a warning: Sentinel-7 active. Unauthorized access will trigger federal response. This is not a drill. To me, it was just part of the setup. To Patricia, it was a personal affront. She marched over one Tuesday afternoon, clipboard in hand, Biscuit trailing behind like a reluctant intern. "Ethan, this is unacceptable," she said, jabbing a manicured nail at the panel. "You can't put up fake government warnings. It's against Regulation 3.1.5, subsection D, no signage implying legal authority without HOA approval. And it's scaring people." I was sipping coffee on my porch, pretending to read a book about beekeeping. "It's not fake, Patricia. It's a security feature. Touch it and it alerts the feds. Simple as that." She laughed a sharp, barking sound that made Biscuit flinch. "The feds? Please. You tech guys think you can scare people with buzzwords. I'm not falling for it. This is a neighborhood, not a military base." I shrugged, keeping my tone light. "Your call." But I wouldn't test it. Patricia's eyes narrowed. "Maybe I will. If you're bluffing, I'm writing you up. If you're not, I'll have a word with the city about unregistered surveillance." She didn't touch it that day, but I knew she would. People like Patricia don't back down the escalate. I logged the interaction in the Sentinel-7 system, a routine entry, civilian inquiry, non-hostile, potential for future interference. The system tagged her biometric profile hate gate, voice pitch and filed it under low-risk local variable. I went back to my coffee, expecting her to drop it. I should have known better. The first incident came 3 days later. I was in the kitchen, making toast, when my phone buzzed with a Sentinel-7 alert. Fingerprint rejection logged. Perimeter panel, 7:34 a.m. I pulled up the footage. There was Patricia, in a tracksuit and visor, poking the panel with her index finger like it was a vending machine button. Biscuit sat nearby, looking bored. She tapped again, then smacked the panel with her clipboard, muttering something about shoddy craftsmanship. The system didn't escalate, just logged the attempt and sent a warning to my dashboard. Unauthorized contact. No breach detected. I marked it, sent a report to my DOD liaison, and figured that was the end of it. It wasn't. That night, at 11:17 p.m., another alert woke me. The red light on my bedroom ceiling blinked, and the system's voice calm, female, unnervingly polite said, "Perimeter breach attempt detected. Eastern Gate." I grabbed my phone. The footage showed Patricia again, this time with a flashlight and a screwdriver, prying at the panel's edge. Biscuit was tied to a nearby tree, looking miserable. "She wasn't subtle," she muttered loudly about tearing down this nonsense and teaching you tech weirdos a lesson. I disabled the external lights to avoid triggering the infrared sensors, but she'd already crossed a line. By pressing the override button for 6 seconds, she'd sent a level 2 alert to a DOD server in Colorado. To her, it was just a panel. To the system, it was a potential cyber intrusion. I didn't sleep much that night. By morning, I had a message from my liaison. "Captain Nguyen, confirm civilian status of breach party. Level to escalation in progress." I replied, "Civilian, non-hostile. HOA President Patricia Hensley, likely acting alone." His response was curt, "Keep system armed. Monitoring." I knew what that meant. Somewhere, an analyst was pulling Patricia's data and records, social media, even her HOA newsletters. She wasn't a threat, but the system didn't care. It was designed to assume the worst. The next day, I noticed a black SUV parked 2 blocks away. It wasn't subtle tinted windows, government plates, the kind of vehicle that screams we're watching. My neighbor, Carl, a retired accountant with a passion for bird watching, knocked on my door around noon. "Ethan, you see those guys down the street? They've been there since dawn." Asked me about my sprinkler schedule. "Weird, right?" I nodded, keeping it vague. "Probably just surveyors." Carl raised an eyebrow. "Surveyors with earpieces? Come on, man. You into something?" I laughed it off, but my stomach churned. The SUV wasn't there for Mike, was there for Patricia. Her face was now in a database, flagged as a person of interest in a low-priority security log. She had no idea. That afternoon, she strutted past my house, clipboard in hand, Biscuit panting behind her. She didn't look at me, but she slowed down, glaring at the panel like it had personally insulted her. I logged it, visual contact, no interaction, to 20 p.m. By evening, things took a turn. Patricia showed up at my gate in what I can only describe as a tactical HOA outfit. khaki cargo pants, a vest with Crestwood Pines safety crew embroidered on it, and a headlamp that made her look like a discount spelunker. She carried a multimeter, the kind you'd buy at a hardware store, and started waving it at the panel. "I'm testing for illegal emissions," she announced to no one in particular. "This is a public safety check." I watched from my living room, popcorn in hand. "Patricia, you're gonna regret that," I muttered. The multimeter's probe touched the panel, and the system logged it as an unauthorized device scan. A silent alarm triggered, and within seconds, a level 3 alert was sent to the DOD. This wasn't just a fingerprint rejection or a button press. This was a device interfacing with classified tech. Somewhere in a bunker, an analyst was now looking at a satellite map of my house, wondering if Patricia was a hacker, a foreign agent, or just a very confused woman with a Home Depot shopping bag. The next morning, the SUVs multiplied. 3 of them, parked at odd angles, like they were staging for a low-budget action movie. Carl texted me, "Dude, your street's turning into a spy novel." I didn't respond. I was too busy fielding a call from Captain Nguyen. "Ethan, what the hell is going on? This woman's tripping alerts, like she's trying to start World War III. "She's just nosy," I said. "Thinks she's saving the neighborhood." He sighed. "She's a civilian, so we're holding off on direct action. But if she keeps this up, we're sending a team. Keep her away from the system." "Easier said than done," I muttered. That afternoon, Patricia doubled down. She showed up with a megaphone eyes. A megaphonian started broadcasting to the neighborhood. "Residents of Crestwood Pines, your safety is at risk. This property," she pointed at my house, "is operating unregistered surveillance equipment, in violation of federal and local codes. I demand transparency." Biscuit barked in support, or maybe just in distress. A few neighbors peeked out their windows, confused. I logged it, sent the footage to Nguyen, and waited. By evening, the DOD had had enough. A drone small, silent, the kind you don't notice unless you're looking for it, buzzed over my house at 7:43 p.m. I got a text from Nguyen, "Aerial validation in progress. ETA ground team, 0600 tomorrow. Do not engage." I didn't plan to. Patricia, though, was about to learn that poking a classified system was like poking a hornet's nest with a selfie stick. The next day, the SUVs were back, but this time they weren't subtle. For agents in plainclothes jeans, hoodies, the kind of casual that screams federal, started knocking on doors, asking vague questions about recent activity. Carl stopped by again, his binoculars dangling around his neck. "They asked about Patricia," he whispered. "Said she's been disruptive. You know anything about that?" I shrugged. "She's got a thing about my gate." Carl grinned. "She's always got a thing about something. Last week, she tried to find me for my birdbath. Said it was too reflective." I chuckled, but my mind was on the drone footage I'd pulled from Sentinel-7. It showed Patricia at 2:14 a.m., creeping along my fence with a flashlight and what looked like a kitchen knife. She didn't cut anything, just poked at the wiring conduit like she was auditioning for a spy movie. The system logged it as a level for breach attempt, and now her profile was upgraded to persistent civilian threat. Not because she was dangerous, but because the AI couldn't tell the difference between malice and idiocy. Patricia didn't stop. She started a petition, going door to door with Biscuit in tow, demanding my security system be dismantled for violating community trust. She got 3 signatures, one of which was from a kid who thought it was for free pizza. Her HOA newsletters grew increasingly unhinged, with headlines like "Is your neighbor spying on you?" and the truth behind the glowing sign. She even posted a blurry photo of my address plaque, captioned, "Proof of unauthorized tech. Report to authorities." The authorities, of course, were already involved, just not the ones she expected. By Friday, the DOD had flagged her as a case study in civilian interference. They weren't laughing. A system like Sentinel-7 was designed to protect against sophisticated threatjackers, spies, rogue operatives. Patricia, with her megaphone and her multimeter, was a glitch they hadn't anticipated. A memo went out to the project team: review protocols for low-intent, high-frequency civilian disruptions. In other words, they were rewriting the rule book because of Patricia. That night, I got a call from General Kessler, Nguyen's boss. His voice was gravelly, tired. "Ethan, we're pulling the plug on her. She's not a threat, but she's a liability. We're sending a containment team tomorrow. They'll talk to her, shut this down. You stay out of it." "Containment?" I asked. "She's just an HOA nut. She's an HOA nut who's tripped for federal alerts in a week," he said. "We can't risk her going viral. Keep your system armed and don't answer her calls." I didn't sleep much that night. The red light on my ceiling blinked intermittently, a reminder that Sentinel-7 was watching. I checked the logs. Patricia had been back at 3:07 a.m., this time with a ladder and a pair of pliers. She didn't climb the fence, just stood there, muttering about taking back control. The system deployed a low-frequency sound pulse, enough to make her stumble and drop her tools. She fled, Biscuit yapping behind her. I logged it, sent the footage, and waited for the feds to handle it. By morning, the neighborhood felt different. The SUVs were gone, replaced by a single unmarked van parked across the street. 2 agents sat inside, sipping coffee, watching Patricia's house. She didn't know it, but her every move was now being tracked not just by my system, but by a DOD task force. Her biometric profile was complete, voice patterns, facial scans, even the way she walked with that slight limp from an old tennis injury. She was a data point now, a variable in a system she couldn't begin to understand. Around noon, Carl texted me a photo of Patricia standing on her lawn, holding a sign that read, "Stop the surveillance state." Biscuit was tied to a stake nearby, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "She's losing it," Carl wrote. "You think she's gonna snap?" I didn't reply. I was too busy watching the live feed from Sentinel-7. Patricia had started pacing, muttering into a voice recorder about electromagnetic pulses and government cover-ups. She was planning something big. I could feel it. The system could, too. Its AI flagged her behavior as erratic, potential for escalation. I logged it, sent it to Nguyen, and braced myself. That afternoon, Patricia crossed the line. She showed up at my gate with a crowbar, a headlamp, and a GoPro strapped to her chest. "This is for the people," she shouted, raising the crowbar like a revolutionary. Before I could react, she swung at the panel. The system responded instantly, a high-pitched deterrent pulse, non-lethal but loud enough to make her drop the crowbar and clutch her ears. Biscuit howled. The GoPro kept rolling, capturing her stumbling backward, yelling about sonic weapons. The alert went to Phase 5, active containment required. Within minutes, the van across the street sprang to life. 2 agents stepped out, calm but purposeful, and approached her. "Mum, step away from the property," one said, flashing a badge. Patricia froze, then started shouting about her rights. They didn't argue. They just escorted her to the van, Biscuit trailing behind, and drove off. I watched from my window, heart pounding. The neighborhood was silent, but I knew this wasn't over. Patricia had just become a federal case, and I was stuck in the middle of it. The system logged the incident. The drone overhead captured aerial footage, and somewhere, an analyst was typing Patricia's name into a report titled Civilian Threat Assessment. Case Study 001. The morning after Patricia's crowbar incident, Crestwood Pines felt like a neighborhood holding its breath. The unmarked van was gone, and so was Patricia, escorted away by federal agents with Biscuit yapping in confusion. My phone was silent, no alerts from Sentinel-7, no texts from Captain Nguyen, no calls from General Kessler. The absence of noise was louder than any alarm. I checked the system logs, subject contained. Phase 5 protocol enacted. Awaiting disposition. The words were clinical, but they carried weight. Patricia wasn't just an annoying neighbor anymore. She was a data point in a federal investigation. A glitch in a system designed for threats far more sophisticated than an HOA president, with a Home Depot arsenal. I sipped my coffee, staring out at the street. The federal sign by my gate's Sentinel-7 active. Unauthorized access will trigger federal response glowed faintly in the morning light. It was a warning, a boundary, and now a magnet for trouble. My neighbor Carl, the birdwatcher, texted me a blurry photo of the empty street where the van had been. "She's gone, man. You think they locked her up?" I didn't reply. I didn't know what to say. The truth was, I didn't know where Patricia was, but I knew she wasn't in jail. The DOD didn't arrest people like her. They contained them, assessed them, and decided how to neutralize the problem without making headlines. By noon, the neighborhood started to stir. A few residents gathered on the corner, whispering and glancing at my house. Carl stopped by with a thermos of tea, his binoculars still dangling around his neck. "People are talking," he said, leaning against my porch railing. "They think Patricia got nabbed by the FBI. Something about your gate being a government experiment." I forced a laugh. "It's just a security system, Carl. She got carried away." He raised an eyebrow. "Carried away doesn't get you a ride in a black van. Come on, Ethan. Level with me. What's going on?" I shrugged, keeping my tone light. Overzealous HOA president meets overzealous imagination. That's all. Carl didn't buy it, but he didn't push. He just sipped his tea and muttered, "She's gonna come back swinging. You know that, right?" I did. Patricia wasn't the type to slink away. She'd been humiliated, escorted off my property in front of her own GoPro. And now the neighborhood was buzzing with rumors. Her pride was a powder keg, and I was standing on the fuse. I checked the Sentinel-7 dashboard. Her biometric profile had been upped at subject, Hensley. Patricia. Status, monitored. Risk level, elevated. The system had flagged her speech patterns from the GoPro footage, noting delusional ideation and potential for escalation. I logged it and sent a report to Nguyen. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. That afternoon, I got my first clue about Patricia's next move. A neighbor, Mrs. Delgado, a sweet woman who baked cookies for every new resident, knocked on my door with a worried look. "Ethan, have you seen this?" She handed me a flyer, printed on neon yellow paper in Comic Sans. It read, "Emergency HOA meeting. Uncover the truth about illegal surveillance in Crestwood Pines. 7 p.m. Clubhouse. All residents urged to attend." At the bottom, in bold, "Presented by Patricia Hensley, HOA President and Community Watchdog." I groaned. "She's back already?" Mrs. Delgado nodded. "She was handing these out at the crack of dawn. Said she's fighting for our rights." "Ethan, is your house really, some kind of spy base?" I smiled, handing the flyer back. "It's just a fancy alarm system, Mrs. D. Patricia's got an overactive imagination." She didn't look convinced but patted my arm and left. I scanned the flyer into Sentinel-7's database, tagging it as civilian agitation material. The system analyzed the text, flagged keywords like surveillance and truth, and sent an automated alert to the DOD. I didn't expect much. Patricia's flyers were more laughable than threatening. But the system didn't take chances. It was designed to overreact, to assume every anomaly was a potential breach. And Patricia was proving to be the ultimate anomaly. The clubhouse meeting was a spectacle, even by Patricia's standards. I didn't attend. Engaging would have violated my DOD directive. To stay neutral, but Carl Liv texted me the highlights. The room was half empty, maybe 15 people, most of whom looked like they'd been lured by the promise of free coffee. Patricia stood at the front, wearing a blazer with shoulder pads that screamed 1980s power suit, and a headset microphone she'd clearly bought off Amazon. Behind her was a projector screen, displaying a grainy photo of my gate, with red circles drawn around the Sentinel-7 panel and the words "Government Tech" scrawled in marker. "She's got a whole PowerPoint," Carl texted. "Slide 1 is your house labeled Threat Hub. Slide 2 is Biscuit looking sad. Caption: victim of EMF radiation." I snorted, nearly choking on my water. "She's lost it," I typed back. "She's just getting started," Carl replied. "Now she's saying your sprinklers are broadcasting signals to satellites." Patricia's presentation, according to Carl, was a 45-minute descent into conspiracy madness. She claimed my house was a covert DOD listening post, that my lawn was laced with sensors to track residents' movements, and that Biscuit's recent lethargy was proof of targeted electromagnetic interference. She didn't have evidence, just a lot of photos of my gate, some blurry screenshots from her GoPro, and a diagram of what she called the Crestwood surveillance grid. The grid was just a map of the neighborhood with my house marked in red, and arrows pointing to everyone else's. Half the room laughed, the other half looked nervous. When someone asked for proof, Patricia held up her multimeter and said, "This detected abnormal frequencies." Nobody pointed out that it was a $19.99 model from a hardware store. By the end of the meeting, she'd rallied exactly for supporters 2 elderly men who nodded off during the presentation, a teenager who signed her petition for a lark, and a woman who thought surveillance meant cable TV outages. But Patricia didn't need a crowd, she needed a stage, and she was about to get a bigger one. The next morning, I woke to a new alert: external media detected. Keyword: Crestwood Pines. Sentinel-7's web crawler had picked up a post on a local news blog titled "HOA President Claims Neighbor's House is Secret Government Base." The article quoted Patricia extensively, complete with a photo of her holding biscuit and pointing at my gate. "This is about our freedom," she said. "If we let one house spy on us, what's next? Drones in our backyards?" The post had 200 shares and a comment section filled with laughing emojis and tinfoil hat jokes. I forwarded it to Nguyen with a note: "She's going public. Advice." His response was immediate: "Do nothing. We're handling it." Handling it turned out to mean a low-key visit from a DOD contractor posing as a utility worker. He showed up at noon, clipboard in hand, and inspected my gate while subtly reinforcing the Sentinel-7 panel with a tamper-proof seal. He didn't speak to me, just nodded and left. I logged it: maintenance completed, 12:47 p.m. But Patricia noticed. By evening, she'd posted a new flyer: utility worker or government agent. Demand answers. She included a blurry photo of the contractor's van, circling the license plate like it was evidence of a UFO landing. The neighborhood was starting to fracture. Most residents thought Patricia was unhinged, but a few were curious. Mrs. Delgado asked me if my sprinklers were really safe. Carl started joking about Agent Ethan, but kept glancing at my house like he wasn't sure anymore. Even the kids on the block stopped riding their bikes past my gate, spooked by Patricia's stories. I stayed calm, logged everything, and waited. The system was doing its job: tracking, analyzing, escalating. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were heading toward a breaking point. 3 days later, Patricia went viral. It started with her GoPro footage from the crowbar incident, semi-inevitably the teenager from her meeting clip the part where she screamed about sonic weapons and uploaded it to a social media platform. The caption read, "Whole Lady vs. Spygate, the meltdown." Within hours, it had 10,000 views. By morning, it was trending under Crestwood Karen. Memes flooded the internet, Patricia's face photoshopped onto conspiracy theorists. Biscuit in a tinfoil hat. My gate labeled Area 51 outpost. A late-night talk show host even mentioned it in his monologue, joking about the HOA agent who took on the CIA and lost. I watched it unfold from my living room, a mix of amusement and dread. Sentinel-7's dashboard was lighting up with alerts. Media exposure detected. Risk of civilian escalation. The system was analyzing every post, every comment, flagging keywords like government and surveillance. I sent the data to Nguyen, who called me immediately. "This is a problem, Ethan," he said, his voice tight. "She's drawing attention to the project. We can't have that." "She's just a loudmouth," I said. "It'll blow over." "Not if she keeps posting," he said. "The internet loves a crazy story. We're sending a team to de-escalate. They'll be there tomorrow. Do not engage." I agreed, but I wasn't optimistic. Patricia wasn't the type to de-escalate. Sure enough, by evening, she'd leaned into her newfound fame. She started a blog called Crestwood Uncovered, where she posted daily updates about my spy base. She claimed the DOD was using my house to test mind control tech, that my solar panels were beaming data to satellites, and that biscuits fur was falling out from radiation exposure. The blog was a mess: broken links, typos, stock photos of drones, but it was gaining traction. A fringe podcast invited her for an interview, and she spent 30 minutes ranting about electromagnetic tyranny and the deep state in our backyards. The host didn't even try to challenge her. He just kept saying, "Wow, that's wild." The DOD team arrived the next morning, 3 agents, in a nondescript sedan. They didn't knock on my door. Instead, they went straight to Patricia's house. I watched from my upstairs window as they rang her bell. She answered in her HOA tactical vest, biscuit under one arm, and immediately started waving her clipboard. The agents were calm, professional. One flashed a badge: not FBI, not local, something federal and vague. They spoke for 10 minutes, Patricia's voice rising until she was shouting about her rights as a patriot. Then they handed her a document, got in their car, and left. Carl texted me. They gave her a cease and desist. She's pissed. I checked the Sentinel-7 logs. The system had recorded the interaction, flagging Patricia's elevated heart rate and agitated vocal patterns. It also noted the document, Federal Directive 17C, Civilian Interference Warning. I knew what that meant. It wasn't a restraining order, but it was closely a formal notice that further tampering with my property could lead to charges. Like obstruction of federal operations, I sent the log to Nguyen and waited. Patricia didn't stop. If anything, the warning made her bolder. She posted a scan of the directive on her blog, calling it proof of a cover-up. She started live streaming from her front porch, narrating every car that passed my house like she was a war correspondent. There's another unmarked vehicle, she'd say, zooming in on a delivery truck. They're watching us all. Biscuit, ever the unwilling sidekick, barked on cue. Her streams had a small but dedicated audience that conspiracy buffs, bored locals, and a guy named Truth-Seeker69 who kept commenting, "Keep fighting, Patriot Karen." The tipping point came on a rainy Thursday night. I was in my office, reviewing Sentinel-7's latest diagnostics, when the system pinged, "Perimeter breach, southern fence, unauthorized biometric detected." I pulled up the footage. There was Patricia, soaked to the bone, wearing a black hoodie and carrying a pair of bolt cutters. She was trying to pry open a utility panel near my backyard, muttering about cutting the signal. Biscuit was nowhere in sight, probably the smartest decision she'd made all week. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to run outside, tell her to stop before she got herself arrested. But Kessler's words echoed, "Do not engage." So I let the system handle it. The panel emitted a low-frequency pulse, just enough to make Patricia drop the bolt cutters and stumble back. She cursed, shook her head like she was clearing cobwebs, and ran off into the rain. The system logged it as a Phase 6 breach, active sabotage attempt. Immediate containment recommended. I sent the footage to Nguyen. His response was one word, "Stand by." An hour later, the rain still pouring, I got another alert, subject re-engaged. Eastern Gate. I checked the cameras. Patricia was back, this time with a flashlight, a screwdriver, and what looked like a walkie-talkie. She was talking into it, saying things like Agent P to command. Target is vulnerable at grid point 3. There was no command, no grid. Just Patricia playing spy in a storm. The system flagged her as delusional actor high risk and deployed a deterrent, a high-pitched sound wave that made her drop the screwdriver and clutch her ears. She staggered, tripped over a garden hose, and fell into a mud puddle. The walkie-talkie crackled with static as she scrambled away. I didn't laugh. It wasn't funny anymore. Patricia was unraveling, and the system was escalating her into a corner. I called Nguyen. "She's losing it," I said. "This isn't just HOA nonsense anymore. She needs help." He sighed. "We know. She's been flagged for a psych eval." Teams en route. "Stay out of it, Ethan." At 3:47 a.m., the sedan returned. 2 agents, plus a woman in civilian clothes who I guessed was a psychologist, knocked on Patricia's door. She answered, still in her soaked hoodie, holding Biscuit like a shield. They spoke softly, couldn't hear the words, but the body language was clear. They weren't arresting her, they were intervening. She nodded, her shoulders slumping, and let them in. The sedan stayed parked outside her house until dawn. By morning, the neighborhood was buzzing again. Carl texted me. They took her to a hospital. Not jail hospital. Word is she's getting a mental health check. I didn't reply. I was too busy reviewing the Sentinel-7 logs. The system had compiled a 20-page report on Patricia. Every interaction, every breach, every word she'd said on her live streams. It was chillingly thorough. Her heart rate spikes, her vocal stress patterns, even the way she gripped her bolt cutters. The AI had built a psychological profile. Subject exhibits obsessive behavior, low impulse control, and delusional fixation on perceived threats. The report was already on its way to a DOD review board. Patricia's blog went offline that afternoon. Her live streams stopped. The HOA sent an email announcing that she'd stepped down as president, citing personal reasons. Nobody bought it. Mrs. Delgado dropped off a plate of cookies and whispered, "Is she okay?" I didn't know how to answer. I just nodded and thanked her for the cookies. The SUV stayed for another day, then vanished. Nguyen called to debrief. She's in a facility for observation, he said. Not a threat, just unstable. The system worked, Ethan. It flagged her, contained her, and didn't cause a PR nightmare. Good data, I said, incredulous. She's a person, not a test case. He paused. You're right, but she's also a lesson. We're revising the civilian interference protocols because of her. You did your job. Keep doing it. I hung up, feeling uneasy. The system had worked too well. Patricia wasn't a spy or a terrorist. She was a lonely woman with too much time and too little perspective. And now she was a case study, her life dissected by algorithms and analysts. I looked out at my gate, the Sentinel-7 panel glowing softly. It was protecting me, sure, but it was also watching everyone else. For the first time, I wondered if I was on the right side of this. That night, I got a package. No return address, just a plain envelope with a handwritten note inside. I thought I was saving us. I was wrong. I'm sorry. P. It was Patricia's handwriting, shaky but clear. I didn't know if it was genuine or just another move in her game, but I kept it. Not for the Dodd, not for the system, for me. A reminder that even the most absurd battles leave scars. The days following Patricia's removal from Crestwood Pines were unnervingly quiet. Her house sat dark, the curtains drawn, the porch empty of her usual surveillance post. No more neon flyers, no more live streams, no more biscuit yapping at passing cars. The neighborhood exhaled, as if a storm had passed. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the calm was temporary. Sentinel-7's dashboard hadn't pinged in 48 ARSA record since Patricia's crusade began. Yet the red light on my ceiling blinked intermittently, a reminder that the system was always watching, always waiting. I wasn't sure if it was waiting for Patricia or something else. The HOA wasted no time moving on. By Tuesday, they'd appointed a new president, Mrs. Delgado, who promised to restore harmony and promptly canceled Patricia's great hedge purge. Neighbors stopped whispering about my gate, and Carl, ever the optimist, texted me a meme of a dog in a tinfoil hat with the caption "Biscuits Revenge." I laughed, but it felt hollow. Patricia's apology note thought I was saving us. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Sat on my desk, a quiet accusation. I hadn't responded, hadn't even acknowledged it to the Dodd. It felt too personal, too raw, for their sterile reports. The internet, however, wasn't done with her. The Crestwood Karen hashtag was still trending, spawning parody accounts, reaction videos, and a particularly brutal TikTok where a teenager reenacted Patricia's crowbar meltdown with a broom. And HOA, a late-night show, aired a skit called HOA, Homeland Obnoxious Agency, complete with a fake Patricia waving a clipboard at a cardboard gate. The world laughed, but I didn't. I'd seen the Footgear panic in the rain, her muttered conspiracies, her fall into the mud. She wasn't a villain, just a woman who'd lost her way in a maze of her own making. On Wednesday, I got a call from Captain Nguyen. She's out, he said, his voice clipped. Released from evaluation yesterday. No charges, but she's on a watch list. Low priority, but permanent. Where is she? I asked. Back home. Under advisement to avoid your property. We've got eyes on her. You should too. I glanced at the Sentinel-7 dashboard. Patricia's biometric profile was still active, flagged as monitored, non-hostile. The system had logged her return. Subject detected at 2314 Crestwood Lane, 6:47 a.m. No activity near protected site. I nodded, though Nguyen couldn't see me. I'll keep the system armed. Good, he said. And Ethan, the project's been greenlit for Phase 2. Your her data sealed the deal. Expect upgrades next week. Upgrades? I asked, uneasy. More sensors, tighter encryption, real-time satellite link. You're a success story, Ethan. Congrats. I didn't feel congratulated. I felt complicit. Patricia's obsession had validated Sentinel-7, turning her into a case study for civilian interference. My house, my quiet retirement, was now a permanent Dodd test site. I hung up and stared at the note again. I'm sorry. Maybe she was. Maybe I was too. By Friday, Patricia was back in action, out with bolt cutters or GoPros. but with something subtler and, in its own way, more dangerous. She didn't approach my gate or wave a clipboard. Instead, she launched a new campaign, this time through the neighborhood's online forum. The post was titled "A Call for Transparency. What is happening at 2300 Crestwood Lane?" It was long, articulate, and dripping with righteous indignation. She didn't mention the DOD or spy bases directly, likely because of the federal warning, but she hinted heavily. Our community deserves to know why certain properties are exempt from HOA oversight, she wrote. Why does one resident have technology that triggers federal intervention? What are they hiding? The post got 47 comments in an hour. Most were dismissive, give it a rest, Patricia, but a few were curious. I've seen those vans too, wrote one neighbor. What's with the glowing sign? Asked another. Carl texted me a screenshot with the caption, "She's back." I didn't reply. I was too busy logging the post in Sentinel-7, which flagged it as civilian agitation, medium risk. The system's AI analyzed the forum's sentiment, noting a 12% uptick in suspicion keywords among residents. I sent the report to Nguyen, who responded with a single line, "Monitor closely." Patricia didn't stop at the forum. She started a petition on a public platform, demanding a full investigation into unauthorized surveillance equipment in Crestwood Pines. She didn't name me, but the description of property with advanced security systems that violate community standards left no doubt. The petition got to hundreds of signatures, mostly from outside the neighborhood, likely bots or conspiracy enthusiasts. Still, it was gaining traction. A local news station picked it up, running a segment titled "Suburban Standoff, HOA versus High-Tech Home." The reporter stood in front of my gate, gesturing at the Sentinel-7 panel like it was a UFO. "Residents claim this device is more than it seems," she said. Cutting to an interview with Patricia. On camera, Patricia was polished, her tactical vest replaced by a blazer and pearls. "I'm not against security," she said, holding biscuit for sympathy. "But when a single resident's technology brings federal agents to our streets, we deserve answers." She sounded reasonable, almost convincing. The comments online were split. Half called her a hero, half called her unhinged. I watched the segment, my stomach twisting. She was playing a smarter game now, weaponizing public opinion instead of crowbars. The DOD wasn't amused. Nguyen called me that evening. "She's pushing boundaries," he said. "The petition's on our radar. If it hits 1,000 signatures, it triggers a review. We can't have Congress sniffing around a classified project." "What do you want me to do?" I asked. "Nothing," he said. "We're handling it. But if she gets near your property again, the system takes over. No warnings." I didn't like the sound of that. Sentinel-7's containment protocols ranged from sound pulses to biometric foam, a non-lethal immobilizer that could pin someone to the ground in seconds. I'd seen it tested in a lab. It wasn't pretty. "She's not a threat," I said. "She's just Patricia. She's a variable," Nguyen snapped, "and variables get contained." By Monday, Crestwood Pines was a house divided. Patricia's petition had 600 signatures, and her forum posts were sparking debates. Some neighbors defended me, "Ethan's a nice guy. Leave him alone," while others started asking questions. Mrs. Delgado stopped by with a tray of brownies and a nervous smile. "People are saying you're working for the government," she said. "Is it true?" I laughed, offering her a seat. "I'm retired, Mrs. D. Just a guy with a fancy alarm system." She nodded, but her eyes lingered on the Sentinel-7 panel outside. "Patricia says it's dangerous. Says it's watching us." "It's watching my mailbox," I said, keeping it light. "Keeps the raccoons away." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. As she left, I logged the interaction. Civilian inquiry, non-hostile, to 20 p.m. The system flagged it as potential sentiment shift, noting Mrs. Delgado's elevated heart rate. I sighed. Even the cookie lady was getting spooked. Carl, meanwhile, was having the time of his life. He'd started a betting pool with other neighbors on how long it would take Patricia to go full tinfoil. "My money's on next week," he said, stopping by with a six-pack. "She's gonna show up with a Faraday cage for biscuit." I chuckled, but my mind was elsewhere. Sentinel-7's logs showed Patricia circling my property at odd hours. Never Close enough to trigger an alert, but close enough to be noticed. She'd walk by at dawn, dusk, midnight, always with Biscuit, always with her phone out, recording. The system tagged her movements as pattern surveillance behavior. I sent the data to Nguyen, who responded, "She's testing us. Stay vigilant." On Wednesday, the upgrades arrived. 2 contractors, disguised as electricians, installed new sensors along my fence-thermal motion, even a ground vibration detector. They added a satellite uplink to the Sentinel-7 panel, making it a direct node to a classified network. The glowing sign got a facelift, designated National Defense Infrastructure, Tier 1 prototype site. It was official. Now my house was untouchable. The contractors didn't speak to me, just nodded and left. I logged it. Upgrade completed, 9:17 a.m. Patricia saw the new sign within hours. I watched her on the security feed, standing at the end of her driveway, staring at it like it was a personal insult. She didn't approach, didn't yell, just stood there, Biscuit panting at her feet. Then she pulled out her phone, snapped a photo, and walked away. That night, her blog updated, "Government admits to secret base in Crestwood Pines." The post included the photo, with arrows pointing to the new sensors and the caption, "They're not even hiding it anymore." It got 3,000 views in 12 hours. The next day, the news vans arrived. 3 of them, parked across from my house, cameras pointed at the gate. A reporter knocked on my door, asking for a statement. I declined, citing private property. They interviewed Patricia instead, who stood on her lawn in a red blazer, holding Biscuit like a prop. "This is about our right to know," she said, gesturing at my house. "If they can put a military base in our neighborhood, what's next? Tanks on our streets?" The segment aired that evening, and the internet exploded. Crestwood Karen trended again, but this time, the tone was shifting. Some called her a whistleblower, others a lunatic. A conspiracy podcast invited her back, and she doubled down, claiming my house was part of a global surveillance grid. She didn't have evidence, but she had passion, and that was enough for some. Her petition hit 900 signatures. Nguyen called me at midnight. "This is getting out of hand," he said. "She's testifying before a congressional subcommittee next week. Oversight wants to know why a civilian tripped a classified system." "She's not a threat," I said, exasperated. "She's just loud." "She's a liability," he said. "And liabilities get managed. Keep your system armed. If she crosses the line, it's out of our hands." The hearing was a closed session, but leaks spread like wildfire. Patricia arrived in D.C., wearing a suit that looked like it was borrowed from a 90s lawyer drama, carrying a binder labeled Crestwood Evidence. She brought diagrams, screenshots from her blog, and a photo of Biscuit with a caption, "Collateral damage of surveillance." According to a leaked transcript, she rambled for 20 minutes about electromagnetic pulses, hidden tunnels, and government overreach. She showed the committee a drawing of my gate with red lines connecting it to satellites, labeled Data Uplink Network. One senator asked if she believed I was an alien. She paused, then said, "I haven't ruled it out." The room reportedly erupted in laughter. Even the stenographer couldn't keep a straight face. But the damage was done. The hearing put Crestwood Pines on the national stage, and my house was the star. Reporters camped outside my gate, their cameras zooming in on the Sentinel-7 panel. A blogger posted a 10-minute video analyzing the sign's font, claiming it was military-grade typography. I stayed inside, blinds drawn, logging every intrusion. Sentinel-7's web crawler flagged 47 articles mentioning my address. I sent them to Nguyen, who responded, "We're containing it. Stay low." Patricia returned to Crestwood Pines a hero to some, a punchline to others. Her blog traffic spiked to 10,000 views a day, and her petition hit 1,200 signatures. She started hosting community awareness walks, leading a small group of supporters past my house while narrating conspiracy theories. "Notice the sensors," she'd say, pointing at my fence. "They're tracking our every move." Biscuit, ever loyal, trotted behind, looking exhausted. The neighborhood was fed up. Mrs. Delgado organized a counter-petition, demanding Patricia stop harassing residents. It got 300 signatures in a day, mostly from people tired of her antics. Carl stopped by with a pizza and a grin. "She's imploding," he said. "Half the block wants her gone. The other half just wants her to shut up." I nodded, but I wasn't so sure. Patricia wasn't imploding, she was evolving. Her blog posts were getting sharper, her rhetoric more polished. She'd stopped mentioning aliens and focused on privacy rights and government transparency. She was learning, adapting, and that scared me more than her crowbar ever did. The breaking point came on a Sunday morning. I woke to a Sentinel-7 alert. Perimeter breach, northern fence. Unauthorized device detected. I pulled up the footage. There was Patricia, dressed in black, holding a handheld signal jammer she'd probably bought online. She was aiming it at my gate, muttering about disrupting the grid. Biscuit was tied to a tree nearby, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. I didn't hesitate. I activated the system's full containment protocol. The gate emitted a high-frequency pulse, disabling the jammer and sending Patricia stumbling back. Then the biometric foam deployed a sticky, non-toxic spray that pinned her to the ground without injury. She screamed, flailing as the foam hardened, her phone still recording. The system logged it. Subject contained, 6:14 a.m. Phase 7 protocol enacted. Within minutes, the sedan was back. 3 agents stepped out, one carrying a device to dissolve the foam. They freed Patricia, who was still shouting about chemical warfare. They didn't arrest her, they escorted her to a van and drove off. Biscuit was picked up by a neighbor, who later told me he was traumatized but fine. Nguyen called me an hour later. "She's done," he said. "PsychEvil confirmed she's not a threat, just unstable. She's been relocated voluntary, for now. Her house is going up for sale." "Relocated?" I asked. "Where?" "Not your concern," he said. "The project's secure. You're clear." I didn't feel clear. I felt like I'd watched a woman unravel, pushed by a system I'd helped create. Sentinel-7 had done its job, contained the threat, logged the data, protected the site. But at what cost? Patricia wasn't a spy or a terrorist. She was a neighbor who'd gone too far down a rabbit hole. And I'd stood by, logging it all, letting the system handle it. A month later, Crestwood Pines was back to normaler, as close as it could get. Patricia's house sold to a young couple who planted roses and waved at everyone. The HOA rewrote its bylaws to limit presidential power, and Mrs. Delgado's cookies became a weekly event. Carl started a new betting pool. How long until the next Patricia showed up? I didn't join in. The Dodds sent me a plaque, gold-trimmed and official, designated National Defense Infrastructure, Tier 1 prototype site. It went up by my gate, next to the Sentinel-7 panel. Neighbors stopped asking questions, and the news vans moved on to the next story. The internet forgot Crestwood Karen, replaced by some new viral sensation. But I didn't forget. I kept Patricia's note, tucked in a drawer with my old DARPA badges. Sometimes I'd pull it out, read it, and wonder what she was doing now. Was she in a new town, starting over? Or was she still chasing shadows, still convinced she was the hero? I'd never know. But I knew one thing. The system was still watching, and I was part of it. Retirement, it turned out, wasn't as quiet as I'd hoped. The red light on my ceiling blinked as I went to bed. Sentinel-7 was awake, logging, analyzing, waiting. And somewhere, in the data it collected, was the story of a woman who thought she could fight the future and lost.